The darkness between the stars belonged to them. For millennia, the Zilth Dominion had hunted the weak, preying upon civilizations that could not resist their onslaught. They were apex predators, an empire of bioengineered monstrosities, their towering frames bristling with muscle and natural weaponry. To the Zilth, the galaxy was a feeding ground. And yet, for the first time in recorded history, something was wrong. Their latest conquest, a system on the edge of the galactic arm, had resisted longer than expected. The prey, some obscure species called humans, were supposed to break quickly. Their technology was crude, their numbers insignificant. And yet, despite initial victories, the Zilth advance had stalled. Worse, ships had started disappearing. Predators did not get hunted. And yet something was happening in the void, something the Zilth could not explain. High Admiral Skreth, commander of the 42nd Conquest Fleet, sat within the biothrone of his flagship, the Devourer of Suns, his 6 crimson eyes narrowing as his neural interfaces fed him reports. Another vessel lost. No distress beacon. No wreckage. Just gone. This was impossible. The Zilth did not lose ships. A voice broke through his thoughts. Admiral, another patrol has vanished. Skreth turned toward the speaker, a towering warrior in iridescent battle chitin. Vanished how? His voice was a guttural growl, his fangs clicking together. The officer hesitated. We do not know. No transmissions. No wreckage. Just silence. Silence. An impossibility in war. Skreth's claws flexed. He had fought hundreds of campaigns across countless worlds. He had personally crushed the skulls of kings, watched empires burn. But now something unknown was hunting them. And the unknown was unacceptable. Summon the fleet, he ordered. We end this now. 300 Zilth warships gathered in orbit above a ruined human colony, their hulls pulsing with an eerie, bioluminescent glow. The fleet cast long shadows over the broken world below. Cities lay in ruins, human defenses reduced to smoldering rubble. And yet, despite their apparent victory, there was no celebration, no feasting. There was only unease. Something was watching them. Admiral, incoming transmission, the officer hissed. Skreth turned toward the bridge's main bioscreen, his mandibles twitching. The humans had finally decided to speak. Good. He would enjoy their pleas for mercy. The screen flickered. A humanoid figure appeared, clad in a matte black void suit, helmet reflecting the eerie glow of the Zilth fleet. The voice that followed was calm. Controlled. This is Captain Elias Voss of the UNSF Black Horizon, the human said. You have made a mistake. Skreth let out a guttural chuckle. The only mistake made here was yours, human. Your species has been weighed, measured, and found wanting. Your planets burn. Your fleets are shattered. Your people are food. The human remained still. His voice, when it came, carried none of the fear Skreth had expected. You believe yourself the apex predator, Voss said. You believe the galaxy belongs to you. Pause. You're wrong. Skreth sneered. And why is that? The human leaned forward. Because you've never fought something that fights back. And then the transmission cut. Alarms erupted across the Devourer of Suns. Admiral. The officer's voice was raw with panic. We have incoming. A flash of light. A human warship dropped into real space directly above the fleet. Silent, predatory, black as the void. The Black Horizon. And the hunt began. One moment the Zilth fleet was whole. The next it was dying. The Black Horizon moved like a phantom, slipping through the formation, weapons flaring with impossible precision. It didn't fight like a standard warship. It hunted, disabling key systems, severing command chains, picking off isolated vessels with surgical efficiency. Zilth warships, designed for overwhelming brute force, flailed against an enemy they couldn't predict. It wasn't just the weapons. It was the tactics. The Zilth fought like beasts. The humans fought like something far worse, something cold, methodical. Predators didn't fight wars. They ambushed. They overpowered. But humans? Humans waged extermination. Skreth watched in disbelief as an entire battlecruiser, the Razor Maw, detonated, its reactors breached by a single pinpoint-placed kinetic slug. Admiral, a frantic voice barked. We must retreat. The humans are. A brilliant beam of light speared through the Devourer of Suns, cutting the officer's words short. Warning klaxons shrieked as fire bloomed across the bridge. Skreth staggered, rage boiling through him. They are nothing, he snarled. We are Zilth. We. The ship shuddered. Then, for the first time in his long, blood-soaked life, High Admiral Skreth felt something cold coil in his chest. Fear. Because at that moment he realized something. They weren't the hunters anymore. And the humans? They weren't prey. They were something far, far worse. The devourer of suns burned. Fire and smoke choked its vast corridors, filling the air with the acrid stench of burning biomass. Zilth crew members scurried like panicked insects, their towering frames useless against the precision of the attack. This was no chaotic brawl, no battlefield where brute strength decided the victor. This was slaughter. High Admiral Skreth staggered through the command deck, his exoskeletal armor cracked, one of his 6 eyes blinded by shrapnel. The black horizon moved through his fleet like a phantom, a surgical scalpel slicing through the flesh of a once mighty predator. "This is impossible," Skreth snarled, slamming a clawed fist against the control console. "One ship, just one, is doing this?" A subordinate, barely clinging to composure, hissed, "It isn't just their ship, Admiral. It's how they fight." Another explosion rocked the vessel. The bridge lighting flickered. The holographic fleet display showed a horror Skreth had never seen. His entire armada was crumbling. Their formation was shattered. The black horizon hadn't engaged in a full frontal assault like the Zilth would have. No, the humans were methodical. Precise. Every ship that exploded wasn't random. The humans were severing supply lines, eliminating command vessels, cutting the head off the beast before it could react. Predators were not used to being dissected. "How do we fight this?" the officer rasped. Skreth's mandibles clicked. "You would not be prey. We adapt. If the humans rely on speed, we smother them. If they strike from the shadows, we drag them into the light." He pointed a claw at the holographic map. "Collapse our formation. Overwhelm them with raw numbers." The officer hesitated. "That's what we've been trying, Admiral." "It isn't working." Skreth froze. The black horizon hadn't just been destroying his ships. It had been leading them, manipulating them. The Zilth were being herded. A new alert screeched through the bridge. "Admiral. Jump signatures, multiple." The display flickered. More ships. Dozens. Hundreds. Human ships. They had never been fighting just the black horizon. It had been leading them into an ambush. Skreth turned, eyes wide with horror. He had underestimated them. Now he would pay the price. The black horizon moved first. Its sleek, black frame cut through the void, opening with a calculated barrage of hypervelocity rounds. Each round was precise, aimed at key vulnerabilities, reactors, engine cores, communication arrays. And then the rest of the human fleet arrived. Destroyers, battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, ships built not for intimidation but for efficiency. They didn't rely on brute force like the Zilth. Every shot counted. Every ship moved with eerie synchronicity. It was war on a level the Zilth had never encountered. The Zilth had expected prey. Instead they had found hunters. "All ships, counterattack." Skreth roared. The fleet obeyed, but it was already too late. The human ships danced through the carnage, firing relentlessly. The Zilth warships, massive and unwieldy, couldn't adjust. Their bulk made them easy targets. The battle was not a clash of titans. It was a culling. The devourer of suns shuddered as something slammed into its hull. Not a weapon. A boarding craft. Skreth's blood ran cold. The humans weren't just destroying them. They were coming aboard. The lights on the bridge flickered. Then darkness. The only illumination came from the emergency glow of biopanels and the dim flicker of fire in the ruined corridors. Something was moving in the shadows. Skreth stood frozen, listening. The air was thick with the scent of burning organic matter, the stench of his dead crew. He could hear something, footsteps, controlled and deliberate, moving through the wreckage. And then a voice. "You thought we wouldn't fight back." The shadows shifted. A human emerged. Captain Elias Voss stepped forward, his void-black armor gleaming in the dim light. A rifle was slung across his chest, but he hadn't even raised it. He didn't need to. His presence alone was a declaration of victory. Skreth's claws twitched. His muscles coiled. He could still kill this human. He could still fight. Voss tilted his head slightly as if reading his thoughts. "Don't," he said simply. Skreth snarled. "I will not die begging." Voss regarded him for a long moment. Then slowly he unsheathed a combat blade. "Good," he said. And then the real hunt began. Skreth moved first. He lunged with all the fury of a cornered beast, his claws slashing through the air, his 4 lower limbs propelling him forward with terrifying speed. He had killed thousands across a dozen campaigns. He had torn through armored warlords, shredded the flesh of defiant species that dared resist the Zilth dominion. But the human did not flinch. Voss sidestepped effortlessly, fluid as water, and drove his combat blade into the gap between Skreth's upper and lower thorax. The blade bit deep. Skreth roared in agony, swiping wildly. Voss ducked beneath the counterattack and twisted the knife deeper before ripping it free. The Zilth warlord staggered back, clutching his wound. His ichor-black blood dripped onto the ruined deck, sizzling as it met exposed wiring. Fast, Skreth admitted through gritted mandibles. Voss flicked the blood off his blade. You're used to prey that panics, that runs, that fights with fear. He took a slow step forward. We're different. Skreth bared his fangs and charged again. This time he didn't aim for precision, he went for overwhelming force. His 4 lower limbs struck out, trying to seize the human in a crushing grip. Voss rolled under the attack, his movements impossibly controlled, and planted a boot against the Zilth's exposed knee joint. Crack! Skreth howled as his leg buckled. He swung wildly, but Voss was already gone. A brutal strike to the side of his head sent him reeling. He collapsed to one knee. His vision blurred. And then he felt cold steel against his throat. Voss crouched beside him, pressing the combat blade against the soft tissue between his armored plates. His voice was calm level. Your kind fears nothing, he murmured. Until now. Skreth wheezed, struggling to breathe. You fight like us. No, Voss said quietly. We fight better. The blade cut deep. Skreth gurgled, his body convulsing, his limbs twitching, and then at last the warlord of the Zilth Dominion slumped forward, lifeless. The predator was dead. The hunt was over. The bridge of the Devourer of Suns was silent, save for the distant echoes of battle throughout the ship. Voss rose to his feet, flicking his combat knife clean. He tapped his comms. Bridge secured. A voice crackled in response. Status. Voss glanced down at Skreth's lifeless body. Target eliminated, he confirmed. And the fleet? They're done, sir. Voss turned toward the shattered viewport. Through it he could see the battle unfolding beyond. The Zilth Armada, once the terror of the outer systems, was collapsing. The humans had torn through their ranks with calculated precision. Ships detonated in rapid succession, chain reactions ripping through their formations. Their larger warships, once seen as unstoppable behemoths, had been reduced to drifting, burning wrecks. The human fleet had outmaneuvered them, outgunned them, outmatched them. The Zilth had learned a hard truth today. The galaxy had predators, yes, but there was one species that even they feared. The Black Horizon loomed in the wreckage, untouched, watching the final moments of the battle. Inside, Admiral Luthen stood with his hands clasped behind his back, observing the carnage. All Zilth vessels are in retreat, his tactical officer reported. Luthen nodded slowly. Let them run. The officer frowned. Sir? They need to remember this, Luthen said. His gaze was cold, calculating. They need to be the ones to spread the fear. To tell the rest of the galaxy what happens when you try to hunt us. He turned away from the viewport. Make sure a few of their warships survive. And send out a transmission. The officer hesitated. What message, sir? Luthen smiled grimly. Let them know, he said. Humans don't fear predators. We hunt them. The last of the Zilth warships vanished into the void, their battered hulls limping toward the edges of the system. Human vessels did not pursue. They didn't need to. The message had already been delivered. On the ruined bridge of the Devourer of Suns, Captain Elias Voss stood over the corpse of High Admiral Skreth. The towering warlord, once the terror of 100 systems, lay still, his ichor-black blood pooling across the shattered deck. Voss sheathed his combat blade and exhaled. It was over. He tapped his comms. Voss to Black Horizon. Target neutralized. Bridge secured. Admiral Luthen's voice came through, steady as ever. Understood. Begin withdrawal. We've made our point. Voss turned to his team. You heard him. We're done here. The Black Horizon led the human fleet back into the depths of space, leaving the broken Zilth remains behind. News of the battle spread like wildfire. Surviving Zilth warlords, once so certain of their supremacy, convened in emergency councils. Footage of the destruction circulated in hushed channels, whispered between military strategists and paranoid rulers. The mighty Zilth Dominion, the apex predators of the stars, had not just lost. They had been hunted. But it wasn't just the Zilth who were listening. Across the galaxy, species who had long lived in fear of the Zilth began to stir. Their conquerors, their oppressors, beings they had once believed to be invincible, had been brought to their knees. And it was humans who had done it. Resistance cells emboldened. Silent rebellions turned to open defiance. Where Zilth patrols once instilled terror, they now found resentment. And in every whispered conversation, in every rallying cry, the same name was spoken. Humanity. The galaxy was changing. And for the first time, it was the predators who were afraid. On the command deck of the Black Horizon, Admiral Luthen stood at the helm, watching the stars streak past. A comms officer turned. Incoming message, sir. Several systems are reaching out. Some want alliances. Others? The officer hesitated. They want to fight. Luthen nodded. They will. He clasped his hands behind his back, staring out into the void. This war isn't over. Not yet. Voss stepped beside him. What's next? Luthen's lips curled into a knowing smile. The Zilth made one mistake, he said. They thought we were just another species to dominate. He turned, his gaze cold as the void. Now they'll learn what it means to be hunted. The stars burned cold and distant as the Black Horizon moved silently through the void. The battle was over. The message had been delivered. But the true war, the one that would reshape the balance of power across the galaxy, had only just begun. Admiral Luthen watched the swirling nebulae outside the viewport, hands clasped behind his back. The Zilth had learned fear. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength. And now everything was changing. Captain Voss stepped up beside him. You think they'll come back? Luthen let out a slow breath. The Zilth? Maybe. Fear makes people reckless. Desperate. He turned, his expression unreadable. But if they do, they won't be the same Zilth we fought today. Voss nodded. And we won't be the same humans. There was silence for a long moment, the hum of the ship the only sound. Then Luthen smirked. No, he said. We'll be worse. Across the galaxy, the impact of humanity's victory rippled outward. Once enslaved worlds dared to rise. Once mighty empires began to question their own invincibility. And the Zilth? They did not regroup for vengeance. They did not send another war fleet. They hesitated. For the first time in their species' long and brutal history, they stopped, because they had finally encountered something even they feared. Not another empire. Not a stronger predator. But something far worse. Something human. Back aboard the Black Horizon, the bridge crew settled into the calm after battle. The war was not over. Not yet. But for now, humanity had made its stand. They had proven their place in the stars. Not as prey. Not as victims. But as hunters. And no one, not the Zilth, not any empire in the galaxy, would ever forget it. Humanity had arrived. And the universe would never be the same. Fire enjoyed the story? Smash that subscribe button for more epic HFY sci-fi battles, terrifying alien encounters, and legendary human triumphs. Leave a comment. Who should humanity take on next? See you in the next one. Rocket fire.